And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us once again across the Louisiana plain, where we are elevating the cause of constitutional conservatism in Louisiana, elevating the cause of constitutional conservative citizens across the state, and rapidly now draining the Louisiana swamp. My name is Chris.
And I'm Danielle, and this is the State of Freedom, brought to you by freedom-loving Louisiana First Patriots. Hello, State of Freedom warriors. Thank you for inviting us to be part of your day. We are so grateful for you. You're the best listening family anyone could possibly hope for, and we are only here because of your encouragement, your prayers, and your financial support. If you are looking for a way to support us, to advertise with us, or to send us feedback, please visit our website at freedomstate.us. We'd really appreciate it if you'd also help us get the word out and spread the reach of the State of Freedom. Please like the show on whatever platform you listen to us, subscribe to it, and share it. You can share short clips instead of the full episodes from our YouTube and Rumble channels, and links to those are always in the show notes and over on freedomstate.us. Today, we are so pleased to have Tim Temple, Louisiana's new insurance commissioner, joining us. Before we introduce you to Tim, let me read the scripture of the day. It's Ephesians chapter 1, verses 2 through 4. And it says, "I'm writing this letter to all the devoted believers who have been made holy by being one with Jesus, the Anointed One. May God himself, the Heavenly Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, release grace over you and impart total well-being into your lives. Every spiritual blessing in the heavenly realm has already been lavished upon us as a love gift from our wonderful Heavenly Father, the Father of our Lord Jesus, all because he sees us wrapped into Christ. This is why we celebrate him with all our hearts. And in love, he chose us before he laid the foundation of the universe. Because of his great love, he ordained us so that we would be seen as holy in his eyes with an unstained innocence." And what a beautiful prayer of blessing and a reminder that is, because of the price that Jesus paid, the victory that he won, and our free will choice to believe in him and submit our lives to him. We are viewed by God as holy and completely covered by the righteousness of Christ. And we don't need to live bogged down in regret, in shame, or in fear. We should be living in absolute ecstatic joy and boldness because we have been made right with God, and we're now free to live unburdened by the weight of sin and regret. We're free to live in bold, confident pursuit of the calling he's placed inside of us. So let me encourage you and charge you. Purpose to live in joy, in gratitude, and in thanksgiving today. It's your birthright.
And it's a daily commitment, Danielle. It's a daily commitment to live in joy and to live in victory because of one act of supreme sacrifice. And we have to remember that it's not our sins that separate us from God. It's the false belief that anything we do or say can separate us from him. But we really can't be, as St. Paul said, because we are covered with his sacrifice and his blood. And it's a powerful reminder every day of that. As you said at the beginning, Danielle, Tim Temple, the new insurance commissioner, who's already done some great things as commissioner of insurance, is here with us today, and we're so happy to have you. Tim, thank you for taking a few minutes out of your day to join us. How's it going?
Good morning, Chris and Danielle. It's going well. And, something just listening to the scripture there, one of the things that's in there, and you said it's really nice and ties into kind of every day with me, is that the part about to impart well-being, to live with the righteousness. And I can tell you, this is my first forte into public service, and I am absolutely thrilled to be honored with the opportunity to work on behalf of and for my fellow Louisiana citizens. And as I'm going through this process, and we're going to get into it in more detail during this interview, making changes, attacking the status quo and the naysayers that oppose making changes. I wake up every day and I go to sleep every night with that sense of well-being because I know that what we're doing is right. It is the correct path to be on. And every time I get, any pushback from people, I let that wash over me because I feel I have a very good sense of peace with it.
That is beautiful that you have that. And when you are in public service, it's such an important quality to have. Otherwise, you can easily get bogged down. And sometimes you can even allow your vision to be clouded and deterred by the people who are trying to get you to go in a different direction. No question about that.
It's true. I mean, I feel like true north, if you know what true north is, then all of the naysayers and the special interest groups and the people who are tugging at you and perhaps even threatening you or calling you names, it just doesn't matter. It can roll off your back because you know what true north is and you know that you're doing the right thing. And that is exactly what gives us that sense of well-being. So that's so awesome, Tim. I'm so happy to hear that.
Well, thank you. And I guess to get to Chris's other question, it's going well. Today is, I need to look and see, I think it's day 89 that I've been in office. I was inaugurated January 8th. And here in Louisiana, we went into two special sessions almost back to back. The first one dealt with a redistricting issue that the state of Louisiana is facing with congressional districts and some others. And then as soon as that one concluded, we went into a special session to try and address the crime crisis that Louisiana is facing. And then we in the first week in May, we went with our regular session. So we're in week 4, wrapping up week 4 today, dealing with a lot of insurance reform.
Yeah, and it looks like, Tim, before we get into the specific questions, I look at you as someone, and I think most Louisiana citizens who feel so frustrated with the insurance rates, so frustrated with the struggle to maintain their rates and to do what they need to do to keep their insurance active. They look at you sort of as someone who is coming in as a contrary influence against sort of the institutional bureaucracy that has existed in this state for so long and that has been so resistant to real reform. Do you think that your experience in the private sector for so many years, which we think distinguishes you from your predecessors, your experience in the private sector, knowing really how the industry and the business works, is that something that you're using to your advantage?
It is, Chris. And look, as you mentioned, I came from the private sector. This is my first forte into a government job, if you will. But look, insurance is complex. It is a complex financial instrument. And I think that my, over 2 decades of experience wearing, a lot of different hats in this industry, in the insurance industry, I'm going to use my understanding of the complexities to help bring about meaningful institutional fundamental changes to the insurance marketplace here in Louisiana. And one of the things that as I travel the state or if I'm speaking to groups here in Baton Rouge and even legislators at the Capitol is that, I'm bringing about this awareness. And I think people kind of have it, a basic understanding in the back of their mind, but they don't really think about it too much because of the financial stress that, our current crisis is putting on people. But insurance companies do not have to operate in the state of Louisiana. There's no law that says they have to do business, just like there's for most businesses, there's no law that says that. So from our state perspective, we're competing against our neighbors. We're competing against Texas and Arkansas and Mississippi and Alabama and Florida, for insurance capacity, for an insurance company's ability to write policies, whether it's auto or homeowners, workers' comp, umbrella, it doesn't matter. We're competing against companies to come and do business in our state. And so we always need to be mindful of how does our marketplace, how does the state of Louisiana look compared to other states. And that's from the 3 big areas that we have to deal with is our catastrophe exposure. What catastrophes, what weather related events is Louisiana exposed to? And we have our, I would say more than the average in Louisiana. Then we've got to look at our regulatory and our legal environment as well. So that's what I'm messaging to people is that if we don't take care of our house and we don't make it so that insurance companies feel that they can be treated fairly in this state, well, then they're going to go deploy their capital in other states where they are. And so we always have to be mindful. It's not just Louisiana. We're competing on a national and actually a global level when you talk about reinsurance, when you bring reinsurance into the equation. So that's my understanding of the complexities of this. I think it's going to be very beneficial to the citizens of Louisiana as we go through this process of addressing some of our inadequacies, if you will. I'm looking forward to go through that process.
Yeah. So, Tim, it seems like the heart of your philosophy when it comes to insurance is competition, free market, which leads me to the more fundamental question. Why do you think it is right now that insurance rates are so exorbitantly high in Louisiana? Is it because of the lack of intercompetitiveness between insurance companies? And why is it fundamentally that our insurance rates are so high? And really, what is your fundamental vision to do something about that? That's the $64 million questions that Louisiana citizens are asking as they drown with these high rates.
Yes. And look, I think, Chris, that, without putting too much fault on predecessor, and we can't do anything about what occurred, but because we just have to deal with today what has occurred, though. And, for many years, over a decade, we had a relatively calm weather-related experience, right? We didn't have any hurricanes of any notoriety that touched Louisiana for 10 or 12 years, leading up to, August of 2020 when Hurricane Laura struck Southwest Louisiana. But during that period, it was insurance companies. We didn't do a lot of regulatory maintenance was not done. A lot of the legal maintenance, if you will, making sure, how do we tighten up, bills? How do we make us look more attractive? As I said, how do we continue to evolve and maintain, Louisiana as a place for insurance companies to do business? We didn't, because insurance companies were doing well because they weren't having, and again, I know to your listeners, we're really focused on property right now, but this does bleed over into the auto liability, and we can get into that as much detail as you want. But right now, everybody's focused on property. But we encouraged and promoted thinly capitalized companies to come into Louisiana, and they did. And rates were extremely suppressed. You had thinly capitalized companies, meaning they didn't have adequate financial capitalization. They weren't buying proper amounts of reinsurance compared to their potential exposure should a hurricane occur. And they were able to offer a very inexpensive homeowners product. And everybody kind of got it was a false sense of security. It was a false economy. And when we had the hurricanes, and we did have 4, and I know that's unprecedented, but we had 4 hurricanes within a 12-month and 2-day period, 800,000 claims. What that did was it exposed in a very short period of time the rate inadequacy and also the regulatory and the legal issues that the state had, because it all got exposed. All the Band-Aids were pulled off, if you will. And that's what we're faced with right now. So, when I talk about our catastrophic, our exposure to catastrophic risk, to hurricanes particularly, we have not done a good job of keeping up with the most stringent building codes. And the example I use is in Alabama. After the hurricanes they had there, after 2004 and 5, they had Ivan and then Katrina, and it severely impacted their coastal communities. And they started back then with strengthening their building codes. They started with improving their market conditions so that they would be an attractive market. We didn't do that here in Louisiana. And we're all now starting to pay the price, or not starting to, we are all literally paying the price for that.
Tim, on the resilience building infrastructure wise, do you know what's the upfront cost of that? Does it drastically increase the building costs for homeowners to be able to fortify their homes the way that you're talking about?
Danielle, I am told on a roof, and there's various levels that you can fortify your home. There's the roof. You can put on the higher rated shingles. There's a different nailing pattern. more involving more nails to make sure the shingles stay on. There's a waterproofing barrier that's put on. So there's the roof, but then there's the others. There's fortifying your roof or your windows and your doors, to make sure that you have less damage. And so, but we're focused on the roof right now in Louisiana because we have a fortified roof program. It is a state-run or a state-funded program that will allow people to put a fortified roof on their home through a grant process. We've processed, I want to say, over 400 as of yesterday, the most current report I saw. It's about $10,000 is what the numbers are reflecting to fortify your roof. But to put if you're building a new home and you want to go to the fortified standard, I'm told it's a very small, Louisiana's I'm always told it's 95% of what a fortified roof is. So we're working with the legislature to pass more stringent building codes in South Louisiana. The cost, I'm told, is nominal, but the thing that is not part of that conversation is if you do choose to incur that nominal cost, one, you can get a tax credit back from the state of Louisiana for up to $5,000 for putting on a fortified roof.
Okay.
And two, once you have that fortified roof on, the insurance companies in Louisiana have filed discounts. So you will receive a discount every year off of, and the discount applies to the wind portion of your premium. You will receive that discount every single year that home has that fortified, is maintained to that fortified standard. So it's an investment that you get the return on it every single year.
And Tim, just one more point on that. It sounds like it's more incentivized than penalized. Is that the goal?
It is. It is, and I do understand that people just see it as an additional cost. But I think we have to start having the conversation of when you live in Louisiana, especially southern Louisiana, and we'll call that south of I-10. That's normal. That's typically the line of demarcation people like to use to say South Louisiana or coastal Louisiana. We're exposed to hurricane winds, and we need to do a better job as a state. As a people to mitigate that damage. Like I said, Alabama has a fortified program. Mississippi is in the process of creating a fortified program. Texas already has I'm going to say it's a fortified, but they have higher building requirements for their coastal counties. Florida has a similar, it's like a fortified program, but they also have higher building standards. And so if Louisiana choose to fall behind, that makes us a less attractive risk. And that means if insurance companies are going to insure a home, it's going to be at a higher rate. So, we've got to continue to keep up. And it's one thing to say, I should be able to build anything I want, wherever I want. And I think people can do that. But the expectation shouldn't be that your insurance is going to be the same as someone who does build to a higher standard.
Yeah. Two questions on this, Tim. What are the specific qualifications to have the payment for the fortification that you're talking about, the roof fortification, covered within the state program? And if a person an insured does not qualify for that and chooses to do it on their own, you're saying that they will get an annual reduction in their premiums for doing so?
Well, yeah. The first is that the homeowner does not get the grant, and it's up to $10,000. They do not directly receive that. The process is you become an applicant through the Department of Insurance for a grant. Once you're awarded it, you have to show that you're the homeowner, you have a homestead exemption. You currently have insurance and flood insurance on the property. And then an inspector comes out to make sure that the roof can actually be fortified, first and foremost. Provided your roof can be fortified, you, the consumer, then you receive, I think you have to get 3 roofing contractor bids. And there has to be a roofer that is a certified fortified roofer. So it can't just be someone that it can't be your neighbor. It's got to be a roofing contractor that's gone through the process to be able to put on a certified fortified roof. Then once that you contract with them, they put the roof on. Once that roofer submits the invoice, the Department of Insurance pays that roofer directly up to the $10,000.
Yeah.
If it's over $10,000, then you, the homeowner, have to come out of pocket for it.
Got it. That makes sense. Okay. Yeah.
And then once you do that, Chris, you provide your certificate. You the homeowner get a certificate that says I now have a fortified roof. You provide that to your insurance company, your carrier, and they will apply the applicable credit towards your premium.
Okay. And they're required to do so?
They are required by law. Yes.
Tim, is this moving in the legislature right now?
The fortified is already in law. Last year, the legislature allocated $30 million. This current budget year that we're coming up on, they're allocating another 15, and that's going to continue. There was legislation that removed, when the law was enacted 2 years ago, they put a sunset provision on it so that it was going to, eventually just go away.
Okay.
I asked the legislature to remove the sunset because we need to have this program, going forward.
Yeah.
Alabama's had theirs in operation since, I think, 2012. But it also demonstrates to the industry that we're serious and we're committed to continuing to fortify our homes to mitigate against future damages.
Yes.
So that fortified is moving forward.
Okay, great. And what, in terms of other priorities of legislation that will be brought this session or have already started moving, what are some of the top things that you're looking at and hoping to see passed? And feel free to also talk about bad bills that you hope get crushed.
Yeah, sure. As far as the ones that we're supporting, I've got a package of about 19 bills. Some of those are duplicative, meaning there's a sister bill or a brother bill, I guess, one in the House and one in the Senate that do the same thing. But there's 19 bills, and they're really, I think the focus is on, I've got one that it's fair claims, and it simply addresses the claims process that a consumer has to go through after a catastrophic, after a natural disaster like a hurricane. As your listeners can imagine, I mean, it's, your home's been damaged, your contents are destroyed or damaged. You're probably feeling, very vulnerable and frustrated because you're going through this recovery process. And then you put on top of that, just the claims process can sometimes be very burdensome just because of all the complexities. So we're bringing about a fair claims bill that will help the insurance company and the the consumer have a better claim experience, have a better realistic expectation of what's each party needs to do. So that one's moving through. We've got a transparency bill. Litigation funding is a huge industry in our country. I think the last number I saw 2 years ago was a $13 billion industry, and that's simply where people just invest in litigation. And they're investing in a it's not a judicial system, it's a legal system now. And people are simply saying, "Here, law firm, take my money and just go litigate and give me a return on my money." This doesn't prevent that at this stage. This just brings transparency to it. So
yeah, this is the bill, Tim, that requires third-party financing companies to disclose their agreement, and they don't have to disclose the specific numbers, but they have to disclose the fact that there is an agreement, between a plaintiff's attorney and a third-party financing firm to fund the litigation costs until conclusion of the case. Is that the bill you're talking about?
That's correct, yes. And again, it doesn't prohibit it. It just says that, the judge and jury need to be aware of it. There's a file and use bill which allows insurance companies to file and use rate changes. Currently, Louisiana is a prior approval. This is simply to help bring Louisiana into the mainstream. Most states have either a file and use or a use and file bill. We're prior approval. It's an antiquated way. It's a slower process. This just allows speed to market. It's where we need to go. And I get, a lot of the criticism, a lot of the people that want to maintain status quo say that it removes the regulatory oversight that the department currently has, and that is not true at all. The department is still required and still will make sure that the rate filed is actuarially justified, not unduly discriminatory, all the regulations we still have to do. So that's one. And then I've got a modification to the 3-year rule. Louisiana is the only state that has this law that says once a homeowner's company has given you 3 renewals, in a row that they have to continue to do business with you forever. As long as they write policies in Louisiana, they have to give you a renewal. And it's, my predecessor has touted it for the last 20 years as the best consumer protection bill in Louisiana. But, Chris, I'll tell you, I hear people complaining every day that they can't afford the renewal that they're getting. So it doesn't do you any good that a company is forced to give you a renewal if you can't even afford that to begin with. And so
exactly. And Tim, it seems also that the 3-year rule, it seems to sort of diminishes competition, and it really seems to sort of impair the right of contract between an insurance company and a consumer, but to keep them permanently wed to one another.
Right, it does. And look, I mean, like I said, I want insurance companies to have the ability to manage their book of business, to manage their risk. And, that will create competition. This inhibits, like you said, this prohibits companies that want to come do business in Louisiana from doing it because guess what? Texas doesn't require this. Mississippi doesn't. Alabama, Florida. Every other state in the union does not require, does not have this law. So, I know that we can't repeal it immediately because that would create, additional crisis for a lot of people. So it's a very slow repeal of that over many, many years.
And you are obviously sensitive to that. Do you think that with a slow repeal, phasing it out, once it's done, you think that will create a more attractive environment for insurers to come here? Is that a big issue with a lot of insurers?
Yes, I feel very confident because I've had conversations with insurance executives that have told me that is one of the biggest barriers for them wanting to come and do business in Louisiana from their ability. So I think that will. And then on the auto side, we've got bills to address the collateral source, direct action, a 2-year prescription. There's a bill to address the Housley, I think it's called the Housley rule, which simply states that if you bring litigation and say that you had bodily injury as a result of a car accident, for example, you have to prove that the auto accident caused the bodily injury that you're seeking restitution from.
Yeah, and the interesting thing, Tim, about that, the Housley presumption, based on
presumption,
it's a presumption. It basically says that if you didn't have any prior issues with whatever your area of your body you claim was injured, then the presumption is in your favor that this accident caused it. Ultimately, I think you really do have to prove either way. You have to prove that the accident that you're suing over, whatever caused your injury, what you're doing is simply saying that presumption in your favor no longer exists. You just have to go in and prove it.
Correct.
Yeah.
I'm excited to share a fantastic opportunity for State of Freedom listeners who are interested in investing in precious metals or even starting a home-based business in the precious metals industry. Metal Stacks is a precious metals collectors club where you can buy your metals at the best prices on the market, actual dealer cost. They are beating the big sites. They have no credit card fees and no minimums. If you're just interested in purchasing metals at a great price, visit metalstacks.com/dwalker. Get to shopping, that helps me out. I get the commission. You can also refer people to Metal Stacks for an additional income. If you're interested in learning about the referral business aspect of Metal Stacks, email me directly at danielle@freedomstate.us for more information.
Let me ask you about, Tim, a bill that we're following very closely that seems to be very unpopular among Louisiana citizens, certainly among the many people who follow us and listen to us, and that's SB 98. And this is a bill that would criminalize holding a cell phone to your ear and talking on it while you're driving. I mean, I know there are thousands and thousands of people in the state of Louisiana. The vast majority are able to talk on a phone and drive a vehicle at the same time. But this legislation would essentially criminalize that, allow you to be fined, ticketed, sentenced to litter detail or whatever for doing that. And to, make no bones about it, we're opposed to that legislation for a number of reasons. But the question that we have for you is, to what extent would that cause car insurance rates to go up? Would insurance company use that law as a basis upon which to actuarially adjust insurance rates upward?
One, I'll say I don't agree with the criminalization of, that. I think that there's definitely a correlation that distracted drivers are more likely to be involved with either, causing or be part of an accident. And the more accidents you have, as your frequency goes up, well, then, that means your costs go up. So there is a direct correlation with that. I think what we need to be sensitive to that. And again, I'm a proponent of having hands-free driving. I mean, I use it, when I drive. I don't hold my phone up to my head. That's just, I think that is a distraction. My understanding is I don't even know that they make any phones today that don't have a speakerphone feature. So, I think people can comply if a law were to be passed. But Texas has a hands-free driving law. I believe Mississippi and Arkansas do as well. So it gets back to that. We've got to look and see, how do we compare to other states as well? I am a less government, not more government, but however, seatbelts are a good idea. It's demonstrated that if you have a seatbelt on, you get in a car accident, you're less likely to have, severe injury than if you didn't have it on. I think the hands-free driving can be demonstrated to help improve and make you as an individual a more safe, alert driver, which you should benefit from, from an underwriting, from a premium standpoint. I do have a meeting scheduled, and I can't tell you when it is, but it's in the next several weeks, with the head of the Louisiana Highway Safety Department. And that's one of the things I wanted to talk about, was just, do they have any data that shows that? But as far as the criminalization of it, I would have an issue with that as well.
Yeah, I actually had a chance to testify in the Senate committee and on this legislation, testified against it simply because the data is just not there showing that simply talking on a handheld cell phone and while you're driving increases traffic accidents. I'm not talking about texting, of course. I'm not talking about
texting is definitely a whole different
it's
level.
a whole different ballgame. Yeah. It just seems to us.
And I think that it may be, and I'm sorry just to talk over you, Chris, but it may be that I need to have more clarity into this. But look, if you can tell somebody they can't have the phone in their hand from talking, well, then that certainly means that they can't have it for texting either, right? So it may be. I don't know what the author's intent there is, but certainly texting is one that we need to, dissuade as much as possible.
Yeah, I would agree with that. What, Tim, switching gears for just a second here. Every time people think of high car insurance rates, which seem to be going up pretty rapidly, their vehicle liability, coverage, all the rest of it, they trace it directly to lawsuits, and that they say that is the predominant cause. Are lawsuits the primary reason why the litigation environment in Louisiana, is that the primary reason why car insurance liability rates are as high as they are? Or are there other factors in play there?
I think when if you just use numbers and math, Louisiana has a slightly higher frequency of auto accidents per, I believe it's per 100,000 drivers. I think that's how they calculate it. Whatever the math is, it's the same math for all the other states. But we have a slightly higher percentage of cars that get in accidents per that unit of measurement. Where we become an outlier of those cars that get in accidents or vehicles that get in accidents in Louisiana, we are twice as likely to have than the national average bodily injury. So when you get in a wreck in Louisiana, twice as many people claim bodily injury than the national average. And then from those that claim bodily injury, we are 2.6 times, those people are 2.6 times more likely to file litigation than the national average.
And why is that, Tim?
So the numbers are the numbers. Well, look, I think it's been said a lot, and I did not coin this phrase, but it's jackpot litigation. We have an entire generation of folks, and this is my opinion, but I hear it a lot from everybody else, from a lot of other people too, is that people think that when they get in a car wreck that they've just gotten a lottery ticket. They won something. They just don't know how much it is yet. And, we have a high propensity, as I said, that 2.6 times, more than the national average to litigate. Phrase I started using a couple of weeks ago, and I'm going to continue, is that, litigation should not be substitution for the normal claims process. And by that, I simply mean that if you've been in an auto wreck, or if you have had damage to your home, whether it's a result of a fire or a hurricane or a tornado or whatever the cause was, let the claims process run the way it's designed. You paid an insurance company good money towards your premium. Now let them affect the business model that premium is based on. And that means that you let them adjust the claim, you go through the process, and at the end of that process, if you aren't satisfied, if they didn't repair your car to the way it should have been, if they didn't give you enough money to rebuild your home properly, if they took longer than the law allows for them to adjust your claim, guess what? You have the right, you have the ability to go and litigate against your insurance company. But we've got too many people that are putting that right at the beginning of the process. And that adds additional costs to claims that it shouldn't. And guess what? The insurance companies are going to pass that cost back down to you and I as consumers. And so I am certainly a proponent of letting the claims process run the way it's supposed to. And at the end of the day, like I say, if it didn't work right, you still have the opportunity to litigate. Yeah. And I think we've got to start messaging that to people. If you want to, if your business mind is of the sense that whenever you have a claim, you just hire an attorney, well, guess what? That's what, a lot of the current rates we're seeing are reflective of. And if that's what if you're comfortable paying that kind of premium for that type of, right to do that, then that's the reality.
What advice, Tim, would you give, just in a nutshell, what advice would you give insurance carriers to help that process along in a way that's satisfactory to insured? I can tell you that we a number of people, contacted us throughout the state who have said that they have become frustrated with the way that their claims are being adjusted by the insurance companies. So what advice would you give insurance companies to prevent an injured party or someone who's had property damage, an insured, from going to an attorney too soon when it may not be necessary?
And I certainly know that people are frustrated. I can tell you, my own, not my personal experience, but, my mother had her home impacted by Hurricane Laura. And it was, just witnessing it and being part of it to help her through the process, it could have been a whole lot better, a whole lot smoother. I'm currently going through my own claims process with an auto. I was hit, someone ran a red light and ran into me. And so my auto, I'm going through that. That process has been actually very, very smooth. I would say that insurance companies need to utilize and leverage technology where they can to help get a claimant financial restitution quicker. I think the sooner that you can put, and just speaking specifically to like a homeowner that's been involved with, as a result of a hurricane, I think the faster that you can put money in a claimant's hand to help them start to repair, rebuild, and recover, you've created a partnership and not an adversarial relationship. And for the most part, look, insurance companies, insurance is a promise to pay, and insurance companies are in the business to fulfill that promise. There are times when things get in the way of that. And like I said, when you had 800,000 claims within a 12-month period, that stressed the system to where it broke for, some people. But for the vast majority of those 800,000 claims, it worked the way it was intended to. Now, if you're one of the people that didn't work good and you had a bad experience, you don't care how good it was for everybody else because your personal experience was bad. And that's what I'm focused on and working with. Be outside of the laws that we're talking about, outside of the regulations. That's one of the things that I'm actively engaged with the insurance companies are. Let's identify why it didn't work well for this small, for a smaller percentage of people. And let's see, are there ways that we can help fix that? And, for example, the fair claim bill that I referenced, that is one of the things that came out of those conversations is that, our laws are so burdensome and so broad that it's easy for someone to allege a bad faith claim in Louisiana, even though bad faith didn't take place. So that's what we're trying to clean and clear up, so that the consumer has the best claim experience possible. And look, at the end of the day, if there is a carrier that did do something that they shouldn't have, they're still going to have the ability to litigate against that. But we're trying to figure out where things bottlenecked, where they didn't work, and let's improve that so that the majority of the people have a better claims experience.
Yeah. And Tim, you touched on this, but homeowners insurance rates and flood insurance rates in the southern part of the state are just insane right now. They're driving people out of Louisiana. I mentioned to you before we got on air, but I'm from Terrebonne Parish. We got hit really hard down here by Hurricane Ida, and people just can't afford their insurance anymore. And part of this is due to FEMA's faulty flood maps that's putting the onus on homeowners to prove that the flood maps are incorrect, which is a horrible process. And it's in part due to unfinished and unrecognized levees in some coastal parishes. Do you have a plan that's going to tackle this aspect of the insurance crisis? And are you working with FEMA to get this fixed?
Yeah, Danielle, it's when you mentioned the FEMA, the federal flood program, the NFIP, as frustrating as it can be for me sometimes being new to state government, the federal government is just a whole nother level of frustration. This risk rating 2.0 with the NFIP is just a disaster. I just saw some numbers from maybe earlier this week, and it was, I think, the average flood policy increase in Louisiana, so this is statewide, is around 131% from last year. In South Louisiana, it's over 500%. And that is just adding on another level of financial stress to businesses and families that are already, stressed. And so, I don't know. I mean, I'll assume you're like me. You can't budget for a 500% increase on an insurance premium like that. And so I understand that the not just the frustration, but the fear that this ineffective program's having on people. But look, I've been engaged not with FEMA, but I have had conversations with some of our congressional delegation members. They are giving it a very good fight in Washington to try and bring some accountability to the NFIP. And there's other Louisiana parishes, and I believe Lafourche and Terrebonne are and St. Charles are all part of that, in addition to others, trying to, with a litigation, to force the NFIP, which is steadfast, saying that they don't have to disclose how these rates are determined. And that's just lunacy to me.
It is lunacy.
Because we're paying for it coming and going.
They need to be accountable to somebody. And right now they're accountable to no one but themselves. And, I wish as Commissioner of Insurance I had some oversight over that. I don't. I am lending my voice to the argument that they need to do something. They need to be held accountable. But I'll tell you, specifically to what you were talking about with the levees and the flood protection that communities have done, like yours in Terrebonne, they should get credit for that. I know that they're not built with, to the U.S. Corps, approval, but it's been demonstrated, several times that they work, that, they prevented flooding. And one of the things that I have discussed is bringing reinsurance underwriters down to those areas when they travel to the state and show them, because I can tell you, if you can see it, feel it, touch it, it's real. And, that's going to be part of my plan, is to bring them down to South Louisiana, let them walk those levees, let them talk to your, the authorities and the people over those things, and see that they actually work, and with the intent of trying to get some type of acknowledgement, and at the end of the day, credit, if you will, towards rate making when it comes to South Louisiana.
Yeah, I really appreciate that, Tim. And one suggestion is maybe you can talk to AG Merle about the FEMA problems that you're seeing and the untractable discussions and their complete lack of transparency, and see if she would be willing to sue them, because I don't think that they have a right. It's complete government overreach for them to be conveying to our insurance companies flood maps that they don't even have someone in the state to verify or validate are accurate.
Yeah, and you say that, and I'll confirm, my appreciation was the AG was involved in the litigation, but this conversation is going to prompt me to follow up and confirm that. And if not, I will definitely have the conversation with the Attorney General.
She is in one aspect, but I feel like she could maybe hit it from another angle too.
Yeah, well, I will definitely, and I'll tell you what. The other thing, Danielle, is the what's the facility there in Houma? The Civic Center.
Mm-hmm.
When you stand in that room, and I don't know when the last time you were there, but there's one portion of that building where they've got in tape, they put on tape on the wall that shows what the levees have been built to give you kind of a physical representation. I mean, it's things like that. When I say that, to get people down to that part of the state where they can see what's been done, that is very important. And it hasn't been done in the past that I'm aware of, but I am certainly going to make sure that happens under my watch.
Well, thank you for that.
Tim, the tort aspect.
Yes.
Let me ask you, a couple of years ago, there were, under your predecessor, there was an insurance, a tort reform insurance reform package that went through the legislature, and it was widely projected by its proponents to lower insurance rates in Louisiana. Well, I don't think that has happened. Are you familiar with, at least generally, with that prior reform package, and why do you think it is that it didn't achieve the results that were projected and hoped for?
Yeah, and now you're talking about the reform of 2020.
Exactly. Yeah, 4 years ago. Yeah, exactly.
Yes, and look, I mean, I think there were a couple of missteps there. One is that you had people going to the table, guaranteeing that and promising that if this reform was enacted, that rates would drop by 25%. One, there is no way that anyone can give you any type of promise or guarantee. That was a guess, and it was a guess to entice people to support the legislation. I would never put myself or ask or put the expectation of people out there on any type of percentage. That's just not how it's going to work. But the legislation that promise and some others were made around was a series of reform items that were passed by the House and Senate, but were vetoed by the Democratic governor. The reform that did make it out of the House and Senate and that was signed into law by the Democratic governor was a watered down version of that. And so, one, the reform that all these expectations were created around was not passed. It was vetoed. So we've got to acknowledge that. And then two, and I don't want to give the opposition to reform, opportunity to use this to weaken the argument, but we did have, any reform that would have impacted this was slowed down by the courts not being active during COVID. Was reduced by the fact that drivers went down, accidents went down, everything went down. So that is a small portion of that. But at the end of the day, the reform that was pushed and promoted in 2020 was vetoed by the Democratic governor. And as I'd mentioned, we've got some reform, the collateral source, the direct action, some of those other items. We're bringing those back this session. They're in the process, and I am, encouraging the legislature and state leadership to support that.
If everything you want passes, Tim, let's just say you get everything you want, ideal scenario for you. What do you see? What's your prediction? And not that you have to, be 99% sure that it's all going to happen, but what do you hope to see if everything that you want gets through?
Well, look, it's not going to be fast enough. I can tell you that. Change is not going to be fast enough for anybody because everybody is feeling the financial stress now. But look, if we are successful and get this package of property and civil justice or legal reform bills through, I think that the expectation is insurance. I mean, look, I'm having conversations with insurance companies and reinsurance markets on a very regular basis. They are calling. They're watching the testimonies in the committees. They're watching the House votes. The House and Senate debates on the floors. They're interested because they want to do business here. That's encouraging. They're not doing it because I'm asking them to. They're doing it because they're keenly interested in this legislation passing so that they feel comfortable coming and deploying their capital back into Louisiana. So I think that people will start to see that as soon as as soon as these bills are enacted. It's a domino effect. You've got to pass the legislation. Then the insurance companies that want to come back to Louisiana, they have to go through the application process. Then they have to start writing policies. It is going to be a domino effect. It's not going to be as fast as people want, but I do feel very comfortable in saying that companies will come back to Louisiana, so that as a consumer, that means you're going to get competition, and competition is what's going to help put that downward pressure on rate increases, and then stabilize the market, and then you start to anticipate seeing premiums start to come down, as a result of competition. And I know that probably sounds like I'm not answering the question, but this is a process, and change does take time. But I can assure your listeners that if we don't do anything, then that change will never start.
Yeah, and we know you don't have a crystal ball, but you do have experience in this industry. And if you had to say what area you feel like we'll see improvement the soonest, what would you say that area might be?
Look, I think you would see it. So you're saying like whether it's home or auto?
Yeah, home or auto or
premium reductions, possibly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think. Well, you're not going to see the premium reductions until you start seeing companies come in. I think the first indication is going to be when companies start coming back to Louisiana, and being realistic and setting expectations. And look, companies do not start writing a bunch of homeowners policies in a hurricane season. So they're not going to come in and we affect these changes. They're not going to come in and start writing policies in June, July, August, and September. I mean, it's just that is not a realistic expectation. I think that you would start to see more competition at the beginning of the year, after January 1st. I think that's when you could reasonably expect new companies have come back to the state or in the process of coming back and starting to quote business. And then, just like I said, I mean, if you've got two companies that want your business right now that are willing to quote your homeowners or your auto, and a year from now you've got 5 companies, well, I mean, that's free market. You know what happens when 5 people want your business instead of 2? Somebody's going to get it, and you, the consumer, you're going to vote with your dollar. So whoever offers you the best terms at the best price, and that's when people can expect it. That's the process people can expect.
Yeah. And Tim, you have been so gracious with your time, and I know you have to run here, but if our listeners have any ideas they'd like to bring to the table to help reduce rates in Louisiana or make other kinds of improvements, how can they get in touch with your office?
Sure, they can send an you can always call the Department of Insurance, but most people like to email now. An email is commissioner@ldi.la.gov. And that's commissioner spelled out at ldi.la.gov. And then, the phone number here is 225-342-5900.
Tim, one last question I want to ask you to wrap up here. It sounds like your legislative objectives here are based upon conversations and communications you've had with insurance companies who want to do business in Louisiana, but are not coming to Louisiana because they don't think that it is a healthy business climate for them. And if you're successful and that results in them coming to Louisiana, more companies to do business, that will create real competition among the different insurers, which will have the effect of a more free market economy, which will have the ultimate effect of reducing the burden on Louisiana consumers. Is that fair?
Yes, yeah, that is. And look, Chris, I've had conversations with companies that were in Louisiana and that are no longer in Louisiana. I've had conversations with companies that have not been in Louisiana, and I'm having conversations with companies that are here. They've been here for decades. They've done the right thing. They've invested in the communities. They've had the right reinsurance and capital in place and want to continue to be here. In addition to consumer advocacy groups and agents and adjusters, I mean, my personality is very collaborative, and all these solutions that we're bringing, they aren't just ones that I came up with, by myself. It's designed to help. This package is designed to create that competitive marketplace where companies want to come and flourish. And when they flourish, we as consumers flourish. I mean, we promote economic development and growth for oil and gas and the film industry and manufacturing, carbon sequestration, you name it. We're always actively promoting Louisiana as a place to do business. I'm just saying we need to do the same for the insurance industry.
Less government, Tim, more competition. And there's no question that if I didn't know better, I would have been able, if I didn't already know this, I would have been able to guess that you spent many years in private business, not working for the government, because your perspective on all of this certainly reflects that competition is the key to a healthy economy and to happy citizens. So
it's the best consumer protection.
It's the best consumer protection. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Tim. Good luck in your continued efforts. We'll be following it closely, and God bless you going forward.
Well, look, I want to thank both of you for this opportunity to have this conversation, and maybe we can have another one once that session's over and talk about some of these legislative wins and maybe get a little bit more insight onto when we think changes will start to take place.
Beautiful. We'll take you up on that, Tim.
Thank you both, and y'all have a blessed weekend.
Thank you.
Take care.
You too. Chris, we have so much to be grateful for in this state after the last election, and it sounds like Tim Temple is one of the bright spots that we have to be grateful for. This idea of common sense, moving back to competition, moving back to trying to actually be a place where people want to come and do business so that people can get our rates, so the people can, as the people, we can get our rates down. My hesitation is that this is a slow process. You feel like it's turning this big ship around that's been headed in the wrong way for a long time. So I hate that we're not going to see some overnight change, but it's going to take some time. We'll have to let the process play out, but I think he's doing the right things.
And I think it will take time, but as a conservative and as a constitutionalist, I simply believe the less government, the better. The more competition, the less regulation, the better. And it seems like that would apply in the insurance industry as much as it would apply to any other industry, because the more companies are competing for citizens to get their insurance with those companies, the more incentive they have to give those citizens the best deal, the best rates, and the best service. And I just think that that's a principle that holds across the board in every sector, in every business. And I think that Tim, with his background in the private industry, really is uniquely situated to understand that, and to understand this from the perspective both of the consumer and of the insurer. So I think he is definitely on to something there for sure.
Yeah. And, I was really struck by a couple things he said. One thing I really appreciated was this proactive, positive, incentive-based approach to home fortification, because you really worry whenever government starts talking about building codes and all of these things that it's going to be an absolute new requirement that's going to cost you more money. And like he said, there's no guarantees that rates are actually going to go down. We can look at other states and see that fortification has caused rates to go down over time, but it's not necessarily going to be a panacea. So I'm grateful that he sees that. And for people who are able to do it or who want to do it, they will get benefits on both sides. But for people who are maybe not in a position to do it right now, they should not be penalized on top of having the higher rates that are associated with that. So I really appreciated that. I was also very struck by the fact that he said that of the people who get injured in the state, in an auto accident in our state, of the people who are injured in our state, they're 2.6 times more likely to sue. And I still don't think that we have a very good understanding of what the underlying root cause of that is. People have surmised what it might be for years, and we can appreciate that. But I haven't heard a very good explanation, and Tim really talked us through the numbers. So I think that if he had numbers that explained why that was the case, he certainly would have shared them. So I don't know, Chris, do you have an understanding or an appreciation for what is kind of causing so much litigation in that area in our state?
I think in part, Danielle, it has to do with the way many attorneys portray insurance companies and the way that they saturate the market with their advertising, and how much money they've gotten for this injured person or that injured person.
The ambulance chaser syndrome.
Yes, well, it habituates Louisiana citizens who are in car accidents to the idea of immediately going to an attorney, because if I have an attorney, I'll be able to get more money. And I really do think that sometimes it's that mindset that has been created in part, not wholly, but in part by all of the advertising that we see, all of the pitching of, look, if you're in a wreck, come see me, we'll go forward, we'll get you this, we'll get you that. So I think the mindset is there, and indirectly, and a lot of the advertising also portrays insurance companies as the big bad guy all the time. And people are watching this on commercials, listening to it on the radio, a lot of the ads. So I think that is a big part of the reason why that is occurring, because of the misperception people have of insurance companies, which are not all bad, and because of the idea that they can cash in on their wreck, and it's unfortunate, but that's the reality of it. I'm certainly not saying that there are people who are not legitimately injured, and I'm 100% in favor of people pursuing, if necessary, through attorneys when they are legitimately injured. I do not believe in any kind of statutory caps on tort recovery. I don't think the legislature has the constitutional authority to do that. I believe that's for a judge and a jury. But the question you were asking was, why is it that there seems to be so much more of an inclination in Louisiana to sue rather than deal directly with an insurance company? And I think it's because of the mindset that has been created in our state through a lot of the attorney advertising that's occurring.
Yeah, I think you're right. And maybe what we should be doing, instead of trying to direct whether people can sue or not, is to take a look at the incentives to the attorneys and help us understand or bring some exposure to the fact that, they obviously stand to gain a lot, and it's not necessarily to the benefit. It's actually to the detriment of the whole state whenever these suits are so habitually pursued, and it's not really on a as needed case by case basis.
Yeah, that's a very good statement. We definitely need good attorneys, but we need to check and hold in check the idea that just because you've been in a wreck, no matter how minor, that you automatically have to go see an attorney to see how much money you can get out of it. And I think it's unfortunate. And I'm not saying that the people who do go to attorneys immediately are improperly motivated or are doing it for bad reasons. They have been taught and really habituated never to trust an insurance company, no matter what. An insurance company is always trying to screw me, always trying to get over, always trying to lowball, and always trying to put me in a bad position. And that's simply not always the case. There are some bad adjusters and there are some bad insurance companies. But I would say by and large, most insurance companies do want to deal fairly with the claimant and want to try to resolve the cases as fairly and as quickly as they can, because the insurance companies recognize also, Danielle, that they're not benefiting when they get sued. They're not benefiting when they get a letter from an attorney. It's really in their vested interest to try to resolve the case fairly early.
It is. And maybe it comes down to customer service, Chris, and proactive outreach from the insurer. I think about the fact that a lot of people may be buying their insurance just online and it's nameless, faceless. That's really easy to sue something whenever you don't know the person behind it. You don't have any relationship with the Geico gecko. You have no feelings toward him whatsoever. You might like his commercials, but otherwise it's meaningless. But if you have an insurance agent that you have built a relationship with, that you can call when you have a question about your bill, someone picks up the phone to you every couple months and says, hey, just checking in on you and your family. How are you doing? You're a lot less likely to sue that company if you feel some kind of connection to the person who says that they're going to take care of you if anything goes wrong.
So very true. In other words, you do what you can to build a good rapport before you have a situation where someone needs to file a claim.
Absolutely.
Yes, and then if a claim is filed, to respond quickly, to further facilitate that rapport and really reassure the claimant that you are dealing fairly, you want to deal fairly, and you want to resolve the claim for their benefit. But I think those kind of relationships and that kind of rapport is extremely important, no question about it. Well, Danielle, I got to tell you, I've always enjoyed being with you on the state of freedom, rapidly becoming the voice of constitutional conservatism and common sense in the state of Louisiana. I want to take a minute to thank all of our listeners throughout the state, our subscribers, those who share and support the state of freedom. We are just absolutely thrilled to have the voice that we have, and it's only because of the support of citizens across the state.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're looking for a way to support us or to advertise with us, you can visit us at freedomstate.us or drop us a line at info@freedomstate.us. Let us know if there's other people you'd like to hear from the state or from around the country. We're just having the time of our lives, having great conversations, being able to bring those conversations right to your phone, right to your TV, wherever you listen to us. So we're so grateful for you. If you would like to give us a gift by mail, you can do that at P.O. Box 861, Berg, Louisiana 70343. And of course, we are busy at the legislature. We haven't really talked too much about insurance-related bills yet. We haven't seen too many, but we definitely are laser focused with a big old target on the back of SB 98, the much famed cockroach bill that would criminalize handheld cell phone use in your car. Chris, you already mentioned that you've testified against that, but if you'd like to support the very active, very engaged, very vocal work of LACAG, you can do that at lacag.org, and Chris will give you the P.O. Box as well.
P.O. Box 64952, Baton Rouge, Louisiana 70896. I enjoy being the voice of ordinary Louisiana citizens at the legislature so that their concerns and their interests are expressed and expressed decisively and clearly in that building. It's a real thrill and a real honor to do so. And your support of LACAG is so appreciated, so important, and helps to level the playing field against a lot of the big special interests who are always present at the legislature, always trying to influence legislators, and often against the best interests and the health of Louisiana citizens. So your contributions and financial support are truly important and greatly appreciated. And with continued support of both the State of Freedom and LACAG, Danielle, we will march forward each day and take another step to preserve the great state of freedom in Louisiana.
Yes, we will. Thank you, Chris. God bless you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to The State of Freedom. To stay on top of all the calls to action we mentioned today, just check out the show notes for the episode. If you'd like to support the show financially, visit our website at freedomstate.us. If you'd prefer to give by mail, you can send a check to the State of Freedom, LLC at P.O. Box 861, Berg, Louisiana 70343. If you own a business in Louisiana and are interested in supporting our show by advertising, please email us at info@freedomstate.us. To get involved with Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group, visit lacag.org, LACAG.org, or email Chris at chris@lacag.org. If you're enjoying the podcast, please subscribe and share it. Give us a 5-star rating in the reviews. Thanks again, everybody. We'll see you next time.